Hi again from the garden. So I'm out here this morning doing a bunch of garden maintenance, and I've been setting up the camera alongside of me as I go because I wanted to share with you guys what I'm doing and how I am doing it. So I've had some of my flowers getting blooms on them already, but they're all pretty short and they're not quite usable for cut flower bouquets yet. So I've been cutting them back and pinching a lot of them. And what that does is it tells the plant to grow more blooms, and then the stems on those will be longer, and then those will hopefully be usable for my market bouquets. I'm also doing a few things like staking my Delphiniums, which, can you see them? They are going crazy. One of them actually was blooming already, and I cut it off and took it inside to put it in water just to test the vase life. But I'm gonna be staking these as well. And then I also did a pretty massive pruning on my bachelor buttons. They, to be quite honest, were getting out of control. I should have staked them from the beginning. A lot of them were leaning over, and so I did a pretty thick cutting on them and also deadheading them, and hopefully they flush back and give me a lot more blooms. But what I left is covered with buds. So let me just show you everything that I've been working on. So I started with my bachelor buttons. Now these came up really early this season. They seeded from last year, and so they popped up right away in the spring. And to be completely honest, I kind of let them get away from me. Recently I put a couple of bamboo stakes next to them and tied them with some twine because they were growing completely horizontal, laying on the ground. And I knew I needed to get them upright so that they would grow the correct direction. But they have really gotten thick and they needed to be deadheaded. So I first decided to trim out some of the big branches on the one plant. The second plant was a lot thicker than the other one, and so I decided to completely restake it and clean up the plant. Now, I am pruning a lot of these flowers according to Lisa Mason Ziegler's Cool Flowers book. And for bachelor buttons, she suggests cutting the first central stem almost down to ground level, just above the lowest 2 or 3 leaves. Now I've let these go so long that there was no longer a central stem, and so I just took some of the main larger stems down almost to the ground, cut a few of the other branches away so that all of the old blooms were off until they look nice and thinned out. So now that these plants are restaked, I'll water them in thoroughly and hopefully they flush back with lots of new blooms. What I did leave on the plants is covered in buds though. Next was my Delphiniums. For these I was simply getting rid of the spent blooms to rejuvenate new ones. So I cut the stems down about 2 to 3 inches above the ground, right above the joint in the stem. And this should give the plant new energy to create more blooms. This Delphinium already has a couple that will be blooming soon. Then this Delphinium was at the perfect stage for harvesting, so I went ahead and cut it, and I have it in a vase inside that I'm going to test the vase life on. And then the rest of my Delphiniums I needed to stake. We're supposed to get some storms tonight, so this was perfect timing. And for these I just used some bamboo and twine and tied it loosely so that they were supported. So next was my Calendula. These were already giving me some beautiful blooms, but they weren't near long enough for bouquets yet. And so I'm cutting these off just to give the plant enough energy to create some new ones. So Calendula you cut almost down at ground level, and I should start seeing some new blooms shooting up really soon. Next were my 2 Orlaya plants, which is the same deal as the Calendula. I'm getting rid of the current blooms to rejuvenate new ones. And so these also were cut down at ground level. Now here's a look at one of my Yarrow plants. It is absolutely covered in buds, but none of them are ready to harvest yet. Yarrow you want to harvest when the blooms are 2/3 the way open, and you also want to cut it at ground level. I was also pinching my amaranth. Now this is a shorter amaranth variety, and so I just want to promote more branching, and so I'm simply cutting these blooms off above where the new ones are already starting. Same with Gomphrena. I'm just getting rid of the current blooms that are not tall enough, and the current side shoots will branch out and give me more blooms that are longer. So here's a look at a few of my Snapdragons. These were pinched while they were still in the cell trays before they were planted outdoors. And boy, did that really help. They are no longer single stem plants. Some of them have 6 stems. Okay, so that's it for this video. The next project I'm probably going to be working on is putting out all of my floral netting. My Snapdragons are getting pretty tall and I think they're going to be shooting up blooms pretty soon, so I really need to get that done. And then I'm hoping shortly after that I start getting a lot of blooms that I can use to start making market bouquets and hit those farmers markets. So stay tuned, we'll see you soon.